Every sport creates its own deities, but soccer is uniquely cruel to the gods it elevates. For 3 breathtaking seasons, Masima wasn't just treated like a player, he was worshipped as an architectural anomaly, an impenetrable fortress wrapped in a jersey. Strikers approached his defensive third not with tactical ambition, but with a sense of grim resignation, knowing their best efforts would likely die at his feet. But last night, the heavens collapsed. In a chaotic, heart-stopping 11-goal slugfest that felt less like a tactical soccer match and more like an unhinged cinematic firefight, the myth of the invincible wall didn't just crack, it dissolved into thin air. As the final whistle echoed over a stunned stadium, a devastating question began to circulate through the sports world. Was Masima's legendary invincibility nothing more than a carefully manufactured mirage, waiting for the perfect storm to wash it away? Introduction. The birth and burden of an icon. In the modern sporting landscape, true defensive mastery is a rare commodity. While strikers grab the headlines with flash, flair, and high-flying acrobatics, it is the silent, gritty work of the backline that actually wins championships. In this theater of resilience, Masima stood alone. He was the gold standard, a tactical genius whose spatial awareness and physical dominance made him look like a man playing against children. To his fans, Masima was a mathematical certainty. If the opposing team mounted an attack, Masima would intercept it. If a star forward managed to find a sliver of space in the box, Masima's frame would materialize instantly to smother the opportunity. This reputation for absolute invincibility became the psychological bedrock of his team. They pushed numbers forward with reckless abandon, secure in the knowledge that their defensive anchor could clean up any mess left behind. But sports have a way of punishing complacency. Last night's match against their fiercest rivals will go down in history not just for its absurd basketball-like scoreline, but as the night the untouchable icon was dragged back down to earth. The anatomy of the chaos, breaking down the 11-goal firefight. To understand how a defensive titan could surrender so much ground, we must examine the sheer madness of the match itself. This wasn't a slow, calculated chess match. It was a high-velocity slugfest from the very first whistle. The game began at a frantic pace that immediately bypassed the midfields. Both teams' tactical philosophies seemed to boil down to a simple, aggressive premise: attack at all costs. For the first 15 minutes, the strategy yielded pure entertainment for neutral fans, but a brewing disaster for defensive purists. 0-5 goal. Tactical misalignment catches the backline flat. 12 goal. Home, a brilliant counterattack, levels the score. 22 goal. Rivals. The first major visible crack in Masima's positioning. 38 goal. Total chaos in the box leads to a scrappy equalizer. By the time the referee signaled for halftime, the scoreboard read a staggering 3-3. While the stadium erupted in cheers, the tactical analysts in the press box were looking at each other in disbelief. Masima, who usually marshaled his backline with vocal authority and flawless positioning, looked visibly winded, his jersey stained with mud, his eyes darting across the pitch in search of answers that simply weren't there. The illusion shattered. Masima's tactical dissection. When the second half resumed, the floodgates didn't just open, they were blasted off their hinges. The final score settled at a shocking, historic margin, with 11 total goals shared between the two sides. For a team anchored by an invincible defender, conceding that volume of goals is a systemic failure. So, where did the myth break down? A meticulous review of the match footage reveals 3 glaring vulnerabilities that the opposition exploited with surgical precision. 1. The isolation strategy. For years, teams made the mistake of attacking Masima directly, playing right into his physical strengths and superior aerial ability. The opposition last night did the exact opposite. They deliberately pulled their central strikers wide, dragging Masima out of his comfortable, central sweeping zone. By isolating him in one-on-one situations near the touchline, they neutralized his ability to read the game as a whole, forcing him to play as a reactive fullback rather than a proactive center-back. 2. Exploiting the high defensive line. Because Masima's team has historically relied on his recovery speed to stop counterattacks, they played with an aggressively high defensive line. Last night, The rival manager countered this by deploying ultra-fast wingers who ran in behind the defense the moment transition occurred. Masima was forced to constantly sprint backward toward his own goal, a mechanical nightmare for a player of his size. Without adequate cover from his wingbacks, he was left entirely exposed to low, driven crosses that cut across the face of the goal. 3. The burnout factor. No athlete, regardless of their status, is immune to physical and mental fatigue. The relentless end-to-end nature of the 11-goal slugfest meant that Masima was forced to make high-intensity decisions every single minute. By the 75th minute, the mental fatigue manifested in small, uncharacteristic errors, a missed interception here, a delayed step up there. Against an elite attack, those micro-mistakes translate directly into goals. Comparative data, the illusion versus the reality. To truly illustrate the historic anomaly of last night's defensive collapse, we can compare Masima's seasonal averages against the raw statistical reality of the 11-goal nightmare. Metric evaluated historical career average, the 11-goal match reality interceptions, to 90 min 7.8, League Elite 2.1, severely limited, aerial duel win percentage 89%, impenetrable 42%, vulnerable, tackles completed 4.5 per game, 1.2, evaded by attackers, goals conceded per match 0.6, fortress status 5.0 plus. This wasn't just a slightly off night for a great player, it was a statistical deviation so massive that it challenges the very premise of his defensive identity. The psychological aftermath. Can a shattered icon recover? The true test of an athlete is not how they handle success, but how they rebuild themselves after their vulnerabilities have been broadcast to the entire world. For his entire career, Masima's greatest weapon wasn't just his physical prowess, it was his aura. When a striker believes a defender is invincible, they play with doubt. They rush their shots, they hesitate on the ball, and they make poor decisions out of sheer intimidation. By exposing the human limits behind the myth, last night's 11-goal slugfest has effectively stripped Masima of his armor. Future opponents will no longer view him as a fortress, they will view him as a target. The camera caught Masima walking off the pitch after the final whistle, his head bowed, refusing to look at the media regular deck. It was a poignant, sobering image. The king had been dethroned on his own turf, and the road back to legitimacy will require him to reinvent his game from scratch. Conclusion: the mirage fades, the reality begins. Ultimately, last night's 11-goal nightmare proved that invincibility in sports is always a mirage. No system is flawless, no player is unbreakable, and time eventually catches up to every legend. Masima's status as a great defender remains intact, but his status as a flawless god of the pitch is officially dead. The illusion has faded, leaving behind a vulnerable, exhausted human being who must now find a way to adapt to a league that has finally figured out how to make him bleed. The myth is over. The real battle for Masima's legacy begins now.